Hello and welcome to another update. In this one I'll be covering the latest developments from the front line, starting out for the reason you have all clicked on this video, which is the Russians storming the Ukrainian positions as soon as they got their foothold in southern Klischiivka. We see here in this video it starts out with a couple of Russian BMPs and a single tank advancing towards the Ukrainian positions here in southern Klishchiivka. We see constant deployment of artillery across the area. We also see direct fire from the BMPs on the positions, as well as the tank shooting a couple of times. We see the impact of the shells of the BMPs. We also see cluster munitions at the top right of the video. Just taking a look at this, we see exactly what we were expecting to see whenever we see videos, but in the end we just end up seeing artillery after artillery after artillery. This is the sort of combat that we have been expecting, or that we actually saw at the start of the war, but we haven't seen from the Russian side for a very long time. So this actually surprised me when I saw this video claiming that the Russians has managed to recapture these parts, seeing the Russians launching an attack with a couple of BMPs and a tank storming the Ukrainian positions as soon as they entered the southern parts of the village. And then now they are fighting over it, trying to gain control over it, and they managed to push the Ukrainians out by essentially destroying all the buildings and the forest line here in the south of the village to push the Ukrainians out of it. This shows that throughout the fighting, the Russians are really not giving up on this village. As I've been saying from the very start of it, on the very start of the Ukrainian offensive and even before it, Klischiivka is the bastion of southern Bakhmut defense. The Russians will hold on to it at all costs. On to the Staromayorsk area, we see here as well that there is constant fighting in the area. We both see a Ukrainian column driving through the village, allegedly. I haven't done the geolocation, but it does look like the village based on other footage I've seen from it. We see multiple vehicles. I'm not sure exactly how many. First off, there are 4. So we see these vehicles driving through, and then they get hit by artillery as they continue driving through, and at some point most of them have been hit, and there's essentially nothing left from that initial convoy. We also have this video from this morning where the Russian forces were heavily shelling the area. We see fires raging and we see constant explosions and a lot of smoke rising into the air in the area. So here the situation is very controversial, since I have been saying for a while, ever since the Ukrainians captured Staromayorsk actually, that the Urozhaine is a very difficult position for the Russians to hold. There's always the possibility of the Ukrainians attacking from 3 sides, from the west, north and east, and that is exactly what is happening right now. The Ukrainians are constantly storming the Russian positions from 3 different directions. They also have the high ground here to the northeast, which allows them to constantly attack the Russian positions here. The Russians also have some high grounds here to the south and to the southwest. However, there is the issue of the Russian artillery being less concentrated in this area in general, the Remelsky Ledge area, in comparison to other parts of the front line. And this is due to the poor supply in the area. If we take a look at the supply lines, the roads and so on, this is a terrible area to be fighting at, considering the supplies. And then we see the Russians holding on to these forward positions, especially one where it can be attacked by 3 different sides, which allows the Ukrainians to concentrate large amounts of forces into this single area, which makes it very difficult for the Russians to be able to hold the position. Although that is the case, they've managed to actually hold on and fight back for 2 weeks before they now have lost half of the village. And it is likely that they'll actually lose the rest of the village, but so far they're not giving up. They're trying to hold their positions without losing the village. However, if you take a look at the next village, Savitne Pasyanya, we can see that there are some natural barriers here. First off, there is the high ground here to the northwest. Then there is the river line here that goes through in a wide manner to the east, which allows them to actually hold back the Ukrainian forces. If the Ukrainian forces want to gather their forces and go through the river line, it is much more difficult than going from Staromayorsk to Urozhaine. And then we also have the fact that the whole area to the northeast and to the east of the village is just entirely open fields, similar to Urozhaine, but Urozhaine does not have a river line in between those positions. So if the Ukrainians have to break through to the east, they would have to go through a river line and they have to gather their forces across a field. as for the northwest, the Russians have defensive positions here. So that would essentially mean that the Russians would be defending in one direction instead of three directions. If the Ukrainians decide to launch attacks from the east, then that would be a very difficult position for them to hold on to, because the Russians have their defensive positions, they have their artillery, and they are close to Klischiivka, which will allow them to then send reinforcements to Savitne, have shorter supply lines, better artillery support, and so on. So there's many benefits to retreating to Savitne Bashania, and they would most likely be able to hold it onto it much better than they could Urozhaine, but they're insistent on holding on to Urozhaine. This could be a morale thing to try and better the morale of the Russian forces, preventing multiple villages to fall at the same time. I'm not really sure what the reasoning behind it is, but I definitely believe that it is a mistake rather than a success to hold on to Urozhaine. It would be better for them to retreat towards Savitne Bashania. It could be that they were caught off guard with the Ukrainian capture of Sarmayolske, which didn't allow them to actually withdraw. They would have to withdraw under fire, which of course would be better for them to hold onto it rather than withdraw under fire. Then we move on to the next part of the front line, which is the Robotyne area, where here the Ukrainians have actually managed to push the Russians back slightly, pushing them south in the east of Robotyne. So this is an area that the Ukrainians had previously captured, but then the Russians recaptured it, and then the Ukrainians have managed to capture it again. And they are now fighting here to the east of Robotyne, especially by the forest area, but also in the fields to the east of that, as the Ukrainians have managed to advance in the area. We also see here to the northeast of that, the Russians actually made a counterattack southwest of Novopokrovka and managed to recapture some fields here to the southwest of Novopokrovka. So we're seeing some movement here. The Ukrainians have continuing their push, trying to bypass Robotyne to the east, possibly going around the Russian defenses here in the area to focus on the southern aspect, which would allow them to bypass some of the fortifications here to the north of Robotyne, but they have to go through fortifications here on the fields, but they are definitely easier to pass through than the ones at Robotyne. So we could be seeing something like that, or we could see a bypass altogether going straight for Verbove, trying to deflect the Russian forces away from Robotyne towards the first defensive line, because if the Ukrainians manage to break through here to the east, they could just continue advancing in that direction. Although the Russians will be able to launch artillery strikes and ambushes on the Ukrainian convoys moving through, they will still not be able to completely stop it. And if the Ukrainians break through the first defensive line, then Robotyne would be in a very dangerous position. Then we move on to the next part of the front line, which is to the very north in the Kharkiv area, where the Ukrainian forces were pushed further back to the northeast of Klischiivka. As the Russian forces managed to capture yet another field, they managed to advance slightly. This is according to Deep State map. However, Klischiivka stays in the gray zone as both parties keep fighting for it. Neither side has full control over it. There may still be some sort of foothold for both sides, or it is just entirely a war zone, which is why I leave it in the gray zone, as there's no telling who controls it with the intense fighting ongoing in the area. So the general situation in the north is that the Russian forces continue their pressure on the Ukrainian forces defending the villages of Klischiivka as well as Klischiivka and Klishchiivka here to the east. So these three villages are the center of the fighting. There's some fighting here in the areas in between, but these two are definitely the focus. If the Russian forces manage to capture Klischiivka and Klishchiivka, they'll be able to move on to Ivanivka, Stepovo, Novoselivka, as well as Tabaivka to try and cut off some of the villages here to the south, but also allow them to then push northwards and capturing the entire fields here to the north and isolating the Ukrainian forces defending these areas from the rest of the positions as well as the supply lines they have established. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.